Hi, I'm Lydia, your fairy godtuber. Now, so many of you have requested a Fairly Oddparents timeline, so I'm here to grant that wish. In this video, I'll be going over Timmy Turner's entire life, from childhood to being an adult. And don't worry, I'll be sticking to the original animated show here, so I won't be talking about those terrible made-for-TV movies or that god-awful new show either. So this is the complete timeline of Timmy Turner. So before we chat about how this 10-year-old got his fairy godparents, let's Timmy Turner the clog back, way before he was even born. First of all, there were his parents, who were called Mum and Dad.
My real name is... but everyone calls me Dad.
Now Dad, he's always had a crush on Mum and got super jealous whenever he saw his arch nemesis near her.
Dinkleberg.
And decades later, he would continue to hold this grudge against his now neighbour.
Dinkleberg.
Anyway, Dad won Mum's heart by winning a foot race and presenting her with the trophy. But later on in the future, Timmy will accidentally destroy said trophy, so he will have to go back in time to try and fix his mistake. And in typical Timmy fashion, he would make a mess of everything, including ensuring he would never be born and his dad would turn into an evil dictator. So to fix this massive blunder, Timmy would go back in time again, impersonate his dad and win the race himself and give the trophy to his mom, and so restoring the timeline.
Hi Mom, I'm Dad. Will you take this girl with me, marry me, and someday have a boy with a silly pink hat? Okay.
Timmy's mother seemed to have the real edge in the relationship, being a secret CIA agent as well as being a double agent before Timmy was born.
A Russian submarine?
I was a double agent.
Mum and Dad eventually got married and were expecting their very first child, a baby girl. But when Timmy turned out to be, well, Timmy, he was stuck with the stereotypical girly things they bought their baby. And beside the pink clothing, Timmy was also blessed with some beautifully buck teeth. All because his grandpappy babysat him and let him suck on his pacifier for far too long. Getting his fairy godparents. So, to put it kindly, Timmy's parents aren't the most attentive.
Here, go play with this dangerous acid in the street!
They are constantly abandoning him in the care of cruel babysitter Vicky. But in a flashback, we learned that they were actually super doting to him as a child, with Dad never wanting to leave the house while meticulously documenting every moment of his son's life. But when his dad threatens to leave Timmy just so he will eat his spinach in a typical parental joke threat kind of way, a crying Timmy finds Vicky's babysitting leaflet and calls her to look after him. She turns up, pretends to be the sweetest girl in the world, and even offers to record everything for his dad. So they quickly hired her, and from that moment on, spent pretty much every moment away from Timmy. But like all teenage girls, Vicky was a sadistic monster who loved nothing more than torturing little Timmy, and made his life a living hell. However, his life would turn upside down with an angry throw of his magic 8-ball, and like a Pokeball, out popped Wanda and Cosmo.
Your fairy godparents!
They tell him the rules, their rules, which states that he can't tell anyone about them. So to keep their identity a secret, they disguise themselves as his goldfish. And Timmy wastes no time in using his magical fairies to get sweet payback on Icky Vicky. But the weird thing is when his parents came home, Timmy specifically tells his mum that he wants Vicky to babysit him all the time. A decision I'm sure he definitely regrets now. So this was the original pilot of the show, and the Fairly Oddparents would run for 10 seasons and have a whopping 294 segments. So with at least one wish per episode, Timmy has had a whole lot of misadventures with wishes blowing up in his face. So let's go over some more of them and the highlights of Timmy's life. Timmy's friends and his love life. While the Fairly Oddparents began life as a series of shorts for Oh Yeah cartoons, the full-length series debuted with The Big Problem, and in it Timmy learned a harsh lesson about appreciating childhood. Now Timmy is largely an outcast at Dimsdale, but he does have a few friends, particularly his two BFFs, Chester and AJ. And while Timmy's life is no walk in the park, Chester has it far worse. He's a lower class kid who lives in a trailer park, and his last name even has a cruel twist of irony as his father, Bucky McBadbat, is considered the worst player in baseball and is forced to wear a bag over his head to hide from public shame. Now, we don't know a lot about Chester's mum, mainly because she also wears a bag over her head, and probably ran out of town to avoid public shame too. Which begs the question, why doesn't Chester have his own fairy godparents? His other best friend AJ is arguably the smartest kid in Dimsdale and comes from a pretty rich family. But seeing as he lacks social skills, AJ ends up in the same unpopular club as Timmy and Chester. As well as Chester and AJ, Timmy does have some other friends, including Elmer and his boy Bob.
Silence, you fool.
And there's also Sanjay. However, there's another classmate that Timmy has his eye on, and that's Trixie Tang. But Trixie, she's the most popular girl in school, and Timmy is definitely not on her level in terms of social hierarchy. Therefore, he needs some help from his godparents, and the first of his attempts to catch her attention is in the episode A Wish Too Far. In it, Timmy wishes to be cool, and he got a bunch of new cool stuff to make him look popular. He continues to rudely ask for more and more things to keep the facade going, and after being put on trial and losing his fairies for this, Timmy realizes just how wrong he was. Therefore, he tells the popular kids the truth, which actually earns him a cheeky little kiss from Trixie. Sadly, every time Timmy's on the cusp of winning Trixie's heart, something gets in the way to reset the status quo. In season 4's Just the Two of Us, Timmy decides to dwindle down his competition to nothing by making himself and Trixie the only two people in the entire planet. And even that doesn't work out because Trixie craves attention.
You're pretty?
Say it again!
Timmy realizes the mess he's gotten himself into and tries to break up with her, but of course, she winds up trying to kill him. But luckily, Cosmo and Wanda come to the rescue and undo the wish. But it's finally in season 6 where Timmy finally gets the girl of his dreams. Kinda. The Wishology Trilogy came out in 2009 and is pretty much a 3-hour-long Fairly Oddparents movie. And to cut the long story really short, the darkness takes over the universe and Timmy and Trixie will share a kiss on their lips finally. By the end, the darkness is defeated and it looks like these kids will finally be a couple. Until...
I'm erasing everyone's memory and you'll go back to being the not-chosen bucktooth loser boy.
Perhaps it's just not meant to be. But alas, there is another girl in Timmy's life who is absolutely mad about him, and that's Tootie. And to say she has a mere crush on the boy would be a huge understatement. She even has a freaking shrine dedicated to him that makes Helga's in Hey Arnold look almost normal. Timmy's enemies. Even though he's suffered a lot from Vicky, Timmy has said countless times that if it wasn't for her, he'd never have met Cosmo and Wanda. And while they've had plenty of bad moments, I wanted to talk specifically about one of their key relationship highlights. In season 3's finale Snowbound, Vicky and Timmy find themselves trapped in a snow cave following an avalanche. And as a result of their desperation for survival, they expose their vulnerability to each other, with Vicky even apologizing. But their friendship didn't last too long when Vicky got mad at Timmy for getting in the way of her getting with the abominable snowman, who actually turned out to be the abdominal snowman. Oh yeah. And although Icky Vicky was brutal enough to be the reason why Timmy got his fairy godparents, his perhaps greater adversary was his 5th grade teacher Denzel Crocker. And while plenty of teachers can be mean as hell, Mr. Crocker really takes the biscuit. Ever since season 1, Crocker has been obsessively suspicious of Timmy having fairies.
Fairy godparents!
And as we'll find out later in the show, it turns out that he had and lost fairy godparents of his own. And not just any fairies, but Cosmo and Wanda. In one episode, Timmy even goes back in time to meet the young and kind Denzel, but we find out it was actually due to Timmy who led to the exposure of Cosmo and Wanda, and therefore made them get taken away from Crocker. But before this, and before the fairies erased his memory, Crocker stole a piece of Cosmo's hair and put it in a DNA tracker, writing "Fairy Godparents Exist" on the back of it, and therefore sparking his never-ending quest to discover the truth about fairies. So yeah, Timmy is basically responsible for ruining Crocker's entire life. And one of Mr. Crocker's most infamous supervillain plans came in season 2. Here he hacks into Timmy's computer, hoping to record the existence of fairy godparents and therefore send the evidence to every computer in the world. But fortunately, his computer is so slow that it gave Timmy enough time to try and stop him. Crocker then somehow thwarted his own plans with his very special Crocker virus that ended up eating all of the footage. But this is nothing compared to Crocker's finest hour in Abracatastrophe. Having kept the secret of his fairies from the public for a full year, Timmy was granted a rule-free wish in the form of a lovely muffin. But Crocker gets his bony fingers on it and captures Wanda to make himself a powerful magical entity, instantly becoming the mad ruler of the world. In order to stop him, Timmy breaks the rules and tells his parents that his fairy godparents exist. This frees Wanda and Cosmo, and Crocker loses all of his powers. Timmy then used his magic muffin to wish for his godparents back and for everything to be restored back to normal, and so lived happily ever after. Until the next time. Now, look. You kids, you have your Avengers and Justice League team-ups, but when I was younger, we had the greatest crossover ever. Timmy and Jimmy Neutron. And okay, I admit that doesn't sound as amazing now, but back in the day, you better believe we were hyped as fuck for this epic Nickelodeon crossover. But did it live up to the hype? So onto this, I asked cartoon expert Jordan Fringe to help me break down the 3 Jimmy Timmy specials. So take it away, Jordan.
Thanks, Lydia. I love this show, so any excuse to talk about it, I'm there. So, Timmy and Jimmy were the perfect adversaries turned friends in the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour trilogy, with one kid having a ton of power in the world of sci-fi and the other in the world of fantasy. In the first of the trilogy, Timmy wishes to be in the greatest laboratory in the universe to work on his science project, and finds himself in Jimmy Neutron's lab, complete with a CGI makeover. Jimmy walks in, sees Timmy playing with his stuff, and uses Timmy's auto poofer that transports him into the 2D Dimsdale. And seeing Timmy in 3D is a bit strange, but funny. In all honesty, I think that it's Jimmy who really works in the alternate universe. I love his 2D style of design. Anyway, Timmy starts playing with Jimmy's inventions, and then he mistakes Goddard, the dog, for a computer game console and inserts a copy of Decimator in it. After he meets Cindy Vortex, who finds Timmy far more attractive and intelligent than Jimmy, they go out on a date where they are all interrupted by Goddard, who, thanks to Jimmy, had transformed into the Decimator video game character. So the couple work together to restore Goddard back to normal, with Cindy even convinced that Timmy planned the whole thing, and they even have a cute kiss. Aww. But the fun's cut short with Mr. Crocker's plans to knock down the big wand containing all the fairy magic in Fairy World. So Timmy and Jimmy band together to defeat Crocker using all their might. The heroes succeed, shake hands, and return to their own worlds. These new friends would later unite in Jimmy Timmy Power Hour 2 When Nerds Collide. But this time, they would fight each other in order to be Cindy Vortex's date for the Friday the 13th dance. The two battle, with Timmy winning with some help from Cosmo and Wanda, and Timmy takes Cindy to his world to officially ask her to the dance. They're interrupted, however, by the anti-fairies and their plan to take over the world. And as it turns out, Jimmy's arch-enemy Professor Calamitous entered Dimsdale, working with anti-Cosmo to free the anti-fairies from prison. So Timmy and Jimmy put aside their emotions to stop them, but Timmy accidentally uses AJ's gene splicer to merge Jorgen and Calamitous, creating one horrible monster. It allowed Calamitous to use Jorgen's magic to transform Jimmy and Timmy into snails to conquer Jimmy's world, and creates a bomb big enough to blow up the universe. The boys realize the only way Jorgen can break free from Calamitous is if they break the rules. And oh boy, do they. They wish for chickens to fall in love with humans and use magic to win rock, paper, scissors, thus enraging Jorgen enough to break him free from Calamitous and deactivate the bomb. And as a special reward, Jorgen makes it possible for Cindy to attend both Dimsdale and Retroville's Friday the 13th dance parties. And finally, we have Jimmy Timmy Power Hour 3, The Jerkinators. And with Cindy out of town, our two favorite boys can actually relax and be real bros. Bored after defeating the villains of the multiverse, the duo decide to create their own greatest villain of all time, named Shirley. But Shirley came off a bit stupid, and they decided to abandon him at the mall. And if we know anything about abandoned creatures, it's that they soon come back with a taste for revenge. And that was exactly exactly the case. In their fight for survival, our heroes realize that they made Shirley adaptable and not adoptable, making him basically undefeatable. So much so that when they fire a self-destructive bomb at him, he absorbs Jimmy's brain and the magic of Cosmo and Wanda's wands. All of a sudden, Shirley goes from somewhat of a comedic character into the most dangerous being in the entire multiverse. He even takes parts of both Timmy and Jimmy's universes to create a vacuum that makes both worlds a blank abyss. Luckily, Timmy, Jimmy, and friends eventually manage to outsmart Shirley and succeed in restoring their universes, even giving Shirley a job as a pizza restaurant owner. Overall, this was a pretty decent trilogy with some very fun moments. Nothing incredible or life-changing, but I really appreciated seeing these two Nick shows that had such contrasting styles come together. And as a kid, it blew my mind. Who doesn't love a collab? Now, if you don't mind, I gotta go get back to my Fringemas videos. Thanks so much for having me on though, Lydia.
Thanks, Jordan, and if you want a deeper dive into the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour trilogy, then I'd really recommend Jordan's brilliant video talking all about it on his channel. Growing the Fairy Family. Season 6 started off with a huge special entitled Fairly Odd Baby, where Timmy notices the long-time married Cosmo and Wanda's desire to become proper parents. The reason why they can't is because Cosmo was the last fairy to be born, and Cosmo, being Cosmo, accidentally destroyed the entire fairy world, and so it was decided that fairies wouldn't be able to have babies anymore. However, it wasn't explicitly said in the rules that fairy babies aren't allowed, so Timmy, he wishes for them to have a baby anyway. It all works and Cosmo is actually the one to carry the baby. A weird but super sweet situation, and when the baby finally arrives, Timmy names it Poof. It was also in this episode where we learned that newborn fairies have uncontrollable magical powers, making Poof a target for evil magical groups, like the Pixies or the Anti-Fairies. Eventually, Poof is kidnapped by them to help them destroy the world, but alas, Timmy and Jordan are there to save the annihilation of the planet. And while Poof is a decent addition to the series and is undoubtedly super adorable, her baby can only add so much to a show. Speaking of which, the showrunners also had to salvage falling ratings, and Nickelodeon demanded that Butch add more pointless characters, with one such idea being an actual talking dog. And I can imagine that meeting going something like this.
We at the network want a dog with attitude. He's edgy. He's in your face.
Therefore, in season 9, we were introduced to the brand new character called Sparky, who Timmy adopted in the first episode. And if you thought everybody hated Scrappy Doo, then that's nothing compared to how pissed off fans got over Sparky. And then, one day, Sparky just disappeared. He vanished from the show, quickly written out, all because everybody hated him. But don't worry guys, I actually found long lost footage of his very last episode.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
And if you thought Sparky was bad, then Butch Hartman was like, hold my pencil mate, because season 10 saw the introduction of Chloe, a new girl in town, and due to a shortage of fairy godparents being available to children, Timmy was forced to share Cosmo and Wanda with her. Chloe was introduced to be a foil to Timmy and to freshen up the show, because that worked so well the first time. But I feel she came in a little too late in the show, and she was just too perfect, and also kind of annoying. Just constantly screaming all the time, you know?
Princess Pineapple, get it right!
As such, her addition was not welcomed by the fans. With the shift to the dumping ground of Nicktoons, falling ratings, and the loss of its creator, the show was finally cancelled for good after 10 seasons. And because of this series never got a proper ending, which is a real shame seeing as the Fairly Oddparents was at one point just as popular as SpongeBob SquarePants. So to see a show like this with so many good episodes was just really sad. And personally, I feel that the ending should have shown Timmy all grown up and not needing his fairy godparents anymore. And in a way, we kind of got that at the end of season 4. Adult Timmy. If there's one episode of the Fairly Oddparents that most fans agree would have served as the perfect series finale, it's undoubtedly Channel Chasers. the TV special that aired near the end of season 4. What makes Channel Chasers a great ending to the series is that the story arc is about Timmy accepting that he'll lose his fairies one day and will finally have to let go of his childhood. And as much as a blissful escape Cosmo and Wanda have provided for him, they are still temporary and he will have to become an adult in the real world someday. And the opener for the specials is unlike anything we've ever seen on the Fairly Oddparents before. Chester and AJ are trying to erase the dystopian world they live in 2 decades into the future by creating a time travel belt. However, before using it, a mysterious masked man takes it and is sent back in time by the supreme ruler of the world, Vicky. Meanwhile, in the real world, Timmy starts to get too much into TV and starts using his wishes to emulate the violence and action on the small screen. These actions ruin both of his parents' jobs, thus forbidding him into watching any more TV. So instead of wishing to watch TV, Timmy wishes to live inside of it. Meanwhile, the mysterious masked man enters the portal while Timmy goes through some beautifully animated parodies of classic shows. It's revealed that the masked man is in fact an adult Timmy Turner from the dystopian future. He explains that Vicky used a magical remote to become a dictator and take over the world. And adult Timmy became Vicky's most trusted soldier and was tasked with taking the newly invented time belt to ensure nothing would change. But adult Timmy wants to work with his younger self to stop this future from happening. But their partnership ends when Vicky damages the time belt and adult Timmy is sent back to the future. But when young Timmy manages to fast forward his age to 18, he renders the magic remote useless. But before the fairies come to take Cosmo and Wanda away, they manage to de-age him back into being a kid, and Vicky was defeated once and for all. And although Timmy finally got Vicky fired and reached a new understanding with his parents, he decided to wish for the events of Channel Chasers to be erased from everybody's memory. All because he wanted to enjoy the time he had left with Cosmo and Wanda before becoming an adult. While we sadly had to say goodbye to one adult Timmy, at the end of the special we got to see another adult Timmy who was much happier with his life. This Timmy also has 2 kids of his own, called Tommy and Tammy Turner. And since Timmy has a job and their mother is absent for unknown reasons, Timmy has a robot modelled after Vicky, of all people, to look after his kids. And with that, history repeats itself, and so Cosmo and Wanda return to help out Tommy and Tammy. Seeing a happy adult Timmy at the end of such an amazing special really says to me that this could be a definitive ending of the entire series. And so that comes to the end of the video. If you like this video, then please subscribe to the channel as it really helps this channel grow, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.